Marriage and Money, a conversational podcast about personal financial topics aimed at improving conversations about money in your marriage so you can reach your dreams together. This is a weekly discussion brought to you by a seemingly financially incompatible couple bonded by the legal contract of marriage. My name is David, your favorite saver, and I am joined by the spender that likes to remind me of what I should and shouldn't do, Heather.
You should buy me ice cream, and you shouldn't judge me for eating it.
Oh.
Just to be clear.
Why would I do that? Why would I judge you for anything? Come on. We talked about that last week, I think.
That's right. That's right. You're working on it.
It's something I'm working on. Well, we have another great show planned for you today. Today we're going to be talking about the do's and don'ts of budgeting. Yeah.
Your favorite topic.
I do love budgeting. I seem to bring that up from time to time. I love budgeting.
It's growing on me.
Well,
I mean, we've been doing it for a while now. I feel like a teacher, though. The do's and don'ts.
Aw.
It's time for class, everybody. Pull out the old notebook and
get your number 2 pencils ready.
let's take some notes.
All right. Well, we've talked about budgeting. We had a full episode on budgeting. It's kind of come up from time to time again. But, you know, this is something that I think it's good to continue to come back to. And we haven't talked in depth about budgeting for a while. And I think budgeting is really this great tool that we need in order to help meet our financial goals.
Yeah, what I do like about it is something practical that you can actually put into use and can see results with. A lot of times we talk principles based and theoretical, but this is actually really something that people can put into practice. It's an actual tool that they can pull out of your toolkit, and if you're kind of just lost or looking for something. And I really think it can really, to your point, meet your goals.
True. A lot of times we talk about thinking about things in a certain way, or we talk about conversations that you need to have. And this is so much just, here is almost a formula to success.
Right.
The
for all
closest
you,
thing to a formula for success.
Right. For all you practical people, this is your episode today. This is your jam.
I'm a pretty practical person. That's probably why I like it so much.
It probably is why you like it. It's probably why you struggle.
Oh, well, you know, the other thing I really think is important to bring this topic up again is because it's so easy to get budget fatigue, especially if you're not a budget person. Right?
Really? Do you really believe that yourself?
So I don't think I get budget fatigue, but I recognize it in others.
Yeah.
So I have friends that have done budgeting, and it's like, oh yeah, that's something we did for a while, but then, you know, it didn't quite work out for us. And okay, maybe this is me getting a little judgy, but when people say, oh yeah, you know, it wasn't really our thing, or it served its purpose, I kind of wonder, in the back of my head, I'm wondering, did you run into some problems? Is that the real reason you're not doing it? And that's why you're saying it's not for you? Or is there something else?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, anything that requires you to be really, you know, repetitive and keep in a habit, it gets to be fatigued after a while. So I can see it is hard to keep motivated and remind people why they're doing it and the benefits of keeping at it.
Yeah, so that's why I think it's important to just reemphasize the importance. And as we're reemphasizing that, I think it's also important to remember that every situation is different and every budget is going to be different as well. And so that means if you have a lot going on financially in your household, your budget might be a little more complex than someone that does not have as much going on.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to remember, is that this can look a million different ways. Not every budget is the same, nor is it going to be. And so it can be, you know, as simple as you need it to be, or if you really want to get fancy, it can. So there's a large spectrum of what a budget can look like. So don't get freaked out by, oh my gosh, this sounds scary. But, you know, we're going to give you some really helpful tips, and you can make it, hopefully keep it really simple and to have it be something that works for your situation.
And I would encourage you, if you've tried budgeting before and it hasn't worked, if it's because it's been too cumbersome, maybe it's because what you were doing was too complex. I'm not saying it was, but maybe that's something you should at least consider. How do you start with a simpler budget and then build up from there as needed.
Yeah. It's so funny that I never really liked budgeting in my personal life since it's kind of what I do for my living. Working in finance, that's all I
You're the queen of budgets.
We have to do budgets and hold people accountable to budgets. Maybe it was like that,
The thing is though, you hold other people accountable to budgets.
right. It's like, I'm
don't
going
have
to do
to
that at
hold
work.
yourself
I just don't want to
accountable.
have to do it at home. Good point. Good point.
Yeah. Well, I think, for as people are starting their budgets and they're just getting going, one of the things that I would also recommend is don't just jump into figuring out your budget right on day one. Get a baseline first. Understand where you are today before you start changing everything up. You want to make sure that you understand your current situation, and that can take a little bit of time to fully understand.
Right. I mean, any budget's going to be based on your current state. So unless you know where your expenses, where your money's going, you really aren't going to know how to budget. Because if you have no idea how much you're spending on groceries or car payment or anything, how do you know what to budget if it's $20 a month or $200? So one of the key things that I've heard as a tip is to just take your credit card statement, if you use a credit card, or your bank statement, and just take highlighters and pick different colors and be like, the yellow color is food, the pink color is car, the green color is utilities, and just kind of go through and think, kind of just highlight your expenses by categories and try to add them up. And again, this can be as simple as here's the 5 main categories, or I want to look at 26 categories. But yeah, you really have to start from where you're at, where your money's going today, before you can start building a budget.
26 categories. I'm going to need a lot of highlighting markers, different
I know.
colors.
You're going to need to use all those Crayola. Maybe you need a Crayola.
The 64 pack.
That's right. Trust me, there are enough colors in that rainbow. It is not just the Roy G. Biv.
Okay. I don't know if there's a 64 pack of highlighters, but so maybe when you're just
Sounds like an
starting out-
opportunity. There you go.
Yeah. That's a good idea. I can get into the highlighter 64 pack business. Oh, and I think one of the things that's helped me, at least initially, and has helped me continue as I go, is understanding my goals. So once we got into our budgets, once we had our standards, it was all for me about what's that goal that we're working towards. At the time, it was we're paying down the house, we're eliminating all this debt that we have, and when I have a goal sitting in front of me, I like to get laser focused on it. That's all I think about. I think about so right now, Heather and I are trying to lose a couple pounds. So
There's a little competition going on.
there might be a little competition going on between the two of us. We don't have a weight loss podcast. We get into it there if we did, but there's a competition going on to lose some weight. And so I'm very focused on this. And it's kind of all I think about right now. And when we were paying off the house, that was pretty much all I could think about. And it's that kind of intensity I think you need to make progress. I don't lose weight unless it's all I'm doing. I'm not paying down the house unless it's all I'm thinking about. My whole mind is engaged in it.
Yeah, I think I've heard Ed Milet say this, and I told David this, is that your obsession becomes your possessions if you really are focused on it. But I mean, I just look at this in work, right, in business. Every company that's successful has a plan, and they're held accountable to it.
Yeah.
And if you're going to hit your targets and if you're going to be profitable, you're getting tracked against those goals, right? And so I think goals are key. If you don't have goals, it's kind of what's the point? Why have a budget? If it's well, I don't really have a goal, it's well, then maybe you don't need a budget because...
That's actually a good point. Yeah. If you're not planning to go anywhere in life, sure, you don't need a budget.
If you're not trying to get out of debt, if you're not trying to live below your means, you're not trying to save, well,
If you're not-
you could probably just turn off this podcast. But
Yeah. If you don't care about your future, if you're not thinking about the future, then you don't need this.
but trust us, you do want this. You do want goals. Go back and listen to our goal episode.
Yeah. I really like that example because you're right. Any business has to say this is where we're going, and they have to intentionally go there. Apple didn't just fall into becoming this hugely successful, one of the most valuable companies in the world. That didn't just happen. They put out goals. They didn't just fall into that. And you're not just going to fall into successful finances. You have to set those as goals. And doing that together, doing that as a couple is how you make that happen. And I know we've talked about this before a few times, but that's been one of the cool things about our marriage, Heather, is that we've been able to have these conversations together on a regular basis. And every time we do, it feels like we get closer together because we get more excited about our future. We get more excited about what we've accomplished. And it encourages us to have conversations that we might not otherwise have.
Together forever and never apart.
We really need to edit together all these song clips into like a best
we'll probably
of
have
Heather
to charge
album.
some fees for it. But yeah, no, I think it's really key. I mean, this is a marriage podcast. If you're single, that's fine too. But if you are married, you really should be doing it together. Now, that doesn't mean you can't like I usually prep ahead of time, just realistically for us so that it goes faster. But you're right, like it's a lot of fun to go through it together and be excited about our goals and see the progress we're making. And I think it wouldn't be as fun if it was just kind of me doing it in the sidelines and you not engaged, or vice versa, right?
Not at all. Yeah. So that's what makes it so exciting for me, is that I see, yes, we decided we were going to go after this, and we're going after it. We're getting it done. We're making progress. We are conquering these goals that we put in front of us. That's exciting to me.
Oh, the other thing that you should remember is that, every month is different. And I'm not just talking about the number of days in a month, which there are different days. But, certain months you're going to have a holiday. You're going to have Christmas. Oh my goodness, we got a budget for Christmas, or birthdays, or maybe you're going on vacation, or maybe you're working tons. You're not going to spend any money that month. David probably likes that idea.
That's a good one. Or maybe you're locked up because of COVID and you're not going anywhere. Yeah.
Exactly. So just remember, you have a baseline you can start with, but don't forget that things do fluctuate and there are changes from month to month.
There are. And so you need to adapt from month to month. And that's why Heather and I have a conversation every single month about what's coming up. What are the birthday gifts that we need to buy this month that we didn't have to buy last month? Oh, it's a colder month this month, so our heating bill is going to be a little more expensive. Or it's a hotter month this month, so our air conditioning is going to be used more. So every month is a little bit different. And then we also, in our budget, if we're having a month where we say, yeah, this is a special month where we have to spend a lot, maybe we have a planned maintenance effort that has to happen, or maybe we have I don't know, maybe it's Christmas and we have a lot of birthdays or something, or a lot of gifts to buy. We might have to cut back on other areas of the budget that month in order to make it all work. And so we think about different areas to trim as we go too.
Right. Or the opposite of that, you look at different areas you want to increase. So
Yes, there are two sides to the equation.
it could be a savings category. You didn't let me finish.
It could be.
But the point is that it is good to revisit and look at the areas. Should we be cutting? Is this an area we've been overspending in? Is this an area we need to increase? And
but I would say with most couples, maybe, okay, I don't have research backing this up.
Yeah, I'd like to see your research there, Dr. Perel.
But I would say with most couples, if you're just starting out with a budget, odds are there are some places in there where you can trim back a little bit. Maybe you don't need 3 or 4 streaming service subscriptions. Maybe you don't need to eat out as much as you do.
And that all goes back to your goals, right? Like,
Right.
What are your goals? If you put your budget together and you realize, oh man, like this doesn't add up, we got more going out than coming in, it's like, okay, we got a problem. We got to trim it in. Or, hey, our goal was to save X amount for whatever, a new house, pay down debt, a vacation. And if you're not making that, it's like, okay, well, what do you need to change to hit those goals?
But like you said, it's a two-sided approach. So
Right.
if you're on track or maybe even ahead on those goals, then you can say, well, what's maybe another goal that we could be putting that additional money towards? Or maybe we want to increase lifestyle or whatever we could do. But now you have options in order to make adjustments. And then I think when you're budgeting, or at least when we're budgeting, one thing we've found really helpful is not to plan more than a month ahead. Now, you could maybe plan 2 months ahead. We really only plan no more than a month ahead. We do have our annual cycle, but the problem is when you look out beyond a month, it gets really hard to know what's going to come up in 2 months or 3 months. You don't necessarily know, or you might not, like a month ahead, you might say, oh yeah, the car is making a funny noise. I probably am going to need to bring it in next month. But you're not going to know 3 months from now that the car is going to make a funny noise. So you don't want to plan that far out.
Yeah, I think the other thing is you don't want to just set it and be like, I'm going to come back to it in a couple months, because
Ooh, good point.
To your point, things do change. And so you want to check in on how are you doing against that? And was there something that shocked, or maybe someone lost a job, or there's some situation. And so if you plan too far out, you might just kind of set it and go without like checking in to update and refresh.
Budgets are not a Mr. Popeil situation. Oh, that takes you back to 90s or late 80s, the set it and forget it. Budgets are not set it and forget it. No, it helps to come back and and to revisit. And like I said before, it's a good excuse to have a conversation with your spouse. And if you don't like talking with your spouse,
do you need an excuse to talk to me?
Well,
I feel like there'd be better excuses if you wanted to get my attention than a budget, just so you know. There's a lot of other things I would pick before a budget if you want to talk to me.
Ooh, like what?
Well, that's time for another podcast.
Okay.
Also, when you're starting with your budget, to build a budget for the first time, you should start with the most important categories first. For example, the ice cream budget. It is a food. It is important. Okay, sorry. The wine budget.
Oh my goodness.
You need to have a line item. No, but in all seriousness,
I'll give you that food should be towards the top of your budget.
But in all seriousness, you do need to budget for the important categories like food. And so start with those. Start with your main categories. The Maslow hierarchy of needs. You need food, you need shelter, you need transportation. Like if you're trying to figure out, I don't even know what to start with those main categories, keep it simple, and you can make it more complex as you see necessary. But that's a good place to start.
That's right. Work your way down the list. And then as you're working your way down the list, there are a lot of ways for you to be able to capture and record what your budget is. So Heather and I keep it pretty darn simple. We do it in a Google spreadsheet. So it can be incredibly simple there. But there are apps too that you can use. And so a lot of people will use apps like You Need a Budget, the YNAB app. You can use Mint. You can use EveryDollar. There's a whole bunch of apps out there that you can use. Quicken, I think, does this. Like tons of different apps will allow you to track your budget, however you want to track it.
Yeah, and I'd say that's a great place to start if you have no idea where to get started, or I don't even know how to open Excel, or how do I even put numbers in. Like there's so many amazing resources out there today that really there's no excuse. Like just start with something easy. These are really great tools out there. A lot of them are free or for minimal cost. So
yeah, exactly.
No reason to recreate the wheel. We just didn't know about these when we started a gazillion years ago. And so we kind of just stayed with what we had.
Approximately 1 gazillion years we've been doing this.
We've only been married for 13 and a half, but we've been doing this for a gazillion, it feels like.
How many zeros is that?
I think it's like one budgeting year is the equivalent of like 100 years. Like it's kind of like a dog's life. One year for a dog is like 7.
That's not true.
I'm pretty sure there's research on that
to make it feel that long.
I'm pretty sure there's research on that. I'll find that, just like your research.
Yeah. Listeners, if there isn't a link in the show notes, that means that this is not backed up by research. And so take what Heather says with a grain of salt. But as you're going through and you're doing your budgeting, it can be frustrating. I know we talked at the start of the episode a little bit about how people oftentimes give up on their budgets midway through. They get frustrated, something happens, they go off plan, or things don't quite go the way they expected, or it's just a hard conversation, or I don't know, there's a whole host of reasons that you might give up. I'm just asking, please don't give up. Give it some time. Give it a few months. Stick with it, because it will pay dividends when you stick with it.
Yeah, I heard on a podcast the other day about the definition of integrity is like keeping your promises to yourself, like what you do in private. And I feel like this kind of falls into that category. It's like, if you're going to do this, commit to it at least for 6 months, because this isn't something that it's going to go perfect the first time. It's going to be hard for a while. It's clunky. You're trying to figure it out. So it is something you want to commit to it for 6 months, take the time to get better at it. It'll become easier. It'll become more natural. It'll become more of a habit, but it isn't something that is going to be really easy overnight.
And that was kind of a big eye-opener for me when you called that out. You mentioned that to me a few days ago around integrity is sticking to what you say you do, and that applies to yourself as well. And oftentimes we give ourselves a pass and like, wow, okay, yeah, I should not be giving myself a pass to promises I make for myself. Exactly.
The next thing you don't want to do is make it too complex. This is my life mantra, especially right now in my work life. Keep it simple, sweetie. That's what I like to say. We often over-engineer and make things super fancy and all of the bells and whistles, and it's got to have all the macros and everything. And it's like, no, if you make it too complicated, you're never going to do it. You're not going to be able to repeat it. It's just, this isn't something that needs to be hard. We talked about at the beginning how there's a spectrum, right? And so people can have really detailed budgets and whatever, if you want to color code them and have them fancy and have charts and whatever. But if you're new to this and it's something you don't love, like seriously, just keep it simple. It doesn't need to be that hard.
You were talking about your 26 highlighters at the beginning of the episode, and I cringed a little bit when you said that. And maybe there's someone out there that really has to have 26 categories. But when you're first starting out, especially, start with a lot less than 26. You start small, work your way up, keep it simple. If you have too many categories, it's going to feel complex. If you have too many formulas in your spreadsheet, if it's a lot to manage, it's going to be too complex. If you have too many bank accounts that you're trying to work and reconcile against and pull in, and you have the credit card and you have the bank account and you got the checking account and you've got all these different accounts sitting out there that you're having to look at every month, it's probably too much, and it's probably going to be too much work, and you're probably going to get frustrated, and it's going to take too much time. So try to simplify your finances and your accounts as much as possible.
Yeah, and they often say that complexity is the enemy of execution. So if it is something that we're asking you to commit to for 6 months, if it's just too hard and too complicated, you're not going to do it, because you're going to be like, this is stupid, this is really hard. So the only way you're going to execute and do it is if you keep it simple.
Yeah, more is not necessarily best in this situation. And then you need to remember that you should not be overly strict on your budget. So
What was that? Really?
Well, yes. So now Heather's calling me out because I do
Hi,
like
Pot.
to stick to
Meet
the
Kettle.
budget. I like to stick to the budget. I do. But I also recognize that things come up. But here's the deal. I struggle a little bit with veering from the budget because I don't want it to become flexibility to become an excuse for free spending. So I think there's a balance here between just saying, well, this came up and so we had to do it this month and it's a one-off. And that, like, okay, well, there's this one-off and it happens every month. Well, it's not really a one-off then. So there's a balance between some freedom and some flexibility and not targeting your goals. I think the spirit of a budget is that we've decided to say yes to certain things and we've decided to say no to certain things. And if the things we decided to say no to all of a sudden end up in that, well, we're being flexible, that's where I think I have a bigger problem.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to take it as it comes. I mean, if the car breaks down and you've got 2 weeks left in the month, and it's like, well, we didn't budget to go get the
You gotta
drive
fix it.
shaft fixed. You got to fix it, right? So it's like there's those things. And then, there may be a random happy hour you get invited to, or a friend who had a bad week that you want to take out for ice cream. Don't not do life because, well, I didn't exactly write that into the budget. Now, to your point, you still need to make sure that you're following your goals and that there's a plan. But I think you do need to be realistic that things come up in life and you need to have a conversation about it and say, hey, this came up. And we've had that. Like I've had, hey,
Yes.
my friend is going through this tough time. I'd like to get this gift for them. Are you okay, David? And it's usually not something that comes up that wipes out the budget, right? Because there are things. I mean, your budget's never going to be perfect. You're not going to budget everything perfect. So there's going to be pluses and minuses. But I think the important thing is you're talking about it.
You're
throughout
talking
the
about it.
month.
You're being transparent.
Right.
You're getting everything out in the open. Exactly. And we don't want to. But like I was saying, it's all around the spirit of the budget. Let's follow the spirit of the budget to make sure that we're working towards our goals and we're not sabotaging ourselves.
Right. So we want you to keep up the discussion and carry it on with you and your spouse. So for you at home, talk about budgeting. So I'm not sure where you're at. Maybe you already do budgeting. Maybe you've never done a budget. Maybe you're starting to talk about it. So if you were budgeting and you stopped, have a conversation about what did not work. Like David said, why did you stop? What was the real reason? There had to have been something, maybe it was too complex. Maybe you just didn't keep the promise to yourself. Figure out what that real reason was. If you are budgeting, awesome. Talk about what has been the best benefit of budgeting, how it's helping you reach your goals. And if you aren't budgeting, talk about why. Is it fear, thinking you don't have the time? It's going to be too restrictive. So hopefully you can talk about something in those categories wherever you fall in your marriage. So we'd love to also hear from you on your do's and don'ts of budgeting. Maybe you have other ideas that we didn't even cover. So we're going to be posting on Instagram, and we'd love to hear a comment or drop us a message about other do's and don'ts that you have. So David, what is your favorite part, besides all of it, of the budgeting discussion or process?
I was going to say, you're making me pick here.
And I'm talking about our budgeting, not like the budgeting you do at work.
Okay.
The Prale budget,
Got
the
it.
Prale family budget.
I would say our budget's probably more fun than the work budgeting that I do.
Well, it's a lot smaller, but
Yeah, the numbers are quite a bit smaller on our side.
gonna
than
drop
the
off
work
a few
side,
zeros, but
but that's okay.
Okay.
It's more fun because it's my money. Yeah, so I think the thing that I enjoy most is, and I spoke to this a little bit before, is us coming to an agreement on what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. We're making choices together. It's those choices that we're making, that prioritization that we're doing, that conversation about here's what we value and where we're putting our money against. I enjoy that a lot. And I don't know, I think that's, like I said before, that's just a great opportunity for us to grow closer together because this is something we're doing together. And I find that incredibly exciting.
incredibly exciting.
I do. I mean, you make fun, but I do find it exciting. It
I
is
know
cool.
you do. He gets pretty excited when it's budget time. I've never
I
seen
do.
someone
I'm
so
always
excited.
asking, when are we doing budget committee? Like, because yeah, I get pumped up for it. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to
That's
go. I
awesome.
got to figure out the time. And then if I had to, can I throw in a favorite?
Sure,
favorite
it's your
line item on the
podcast, so
budget?
go ahead, sir.
So you might be surprised, but I think my favorite line item on the budget might be the fun money line item or the pocket money line item. I think
Interesting, because we haven't used that one in like a year and a half.
it's been a long time since we've actually used it, and I miss it, but at the same time, it's like here, there's nothing to buy. I can't buy things. I can't do stuff, but it's just different here. But when we were in the U.S., I would say that was my favorite line item.
That's exciting. I'm glad to hear that you're normal. That makes me feel better. I think we actually talked about this on the last podcast. And I think last time I said that my favorite part is when it's over, which was supposed to be funny, but it probably wasn't. I do actually like reconciling the numbers because I'm a total accountant, so it's pretty exciting when it ties out. But my favorite part with us in the marriage is seeing how we're doing against our goals. Like, I love going to the savings tab at the end of it and being like, all right, let's update this. Where are we at on our savings goals? How are we tracking? How far ahead, usually, are we on that goal? So that's really fun for me to see how we're doing against our goals.
That is super awesome. I really like the savings part. So I didn't say savings because I feel like that's obvious when you're talking about me, right?
Sorry.
I don't know. I didn't want to be too predictable on this, but you're totally right that like it is super exciting to look at that. And that's something we do is we have our monthly in our spreadsheet, we have a tab for every month, and then we have a savings tab for that year to say, how are we tracking against our goals for that year? And it's really fun to check that. And we check it at the end of every month. How are we tracking against our goals for the year? It's super awesome. Anyway, that wraps up our conversation for today. I just want to thank you for joining us today. We would love to hear about how your conversations about money have gone or to take your questions on a future episode. You can email us at marriageandmoneypodcast@gmail.com or message us on Instagram at marriage.and.money. Thanks again for joining us this week, and remember that whether you're a spender or a saver, your best financial life lies somewhere.